Hi guys, Kom here with Studio Sweat On Demand, and this subject is one of the subjects that I'm really passionate about, okay? This is Sidekick Bethany.
Thanks.
I'm so passionate that I forget that. I'm like, don't worry.
Who am I? Who
You're
am I?
so going to be in this conversation. You're a key part of this conversation.
Ooh.
So what we're talking about is the training tool that you're using to measure your heart rate accurate or not? We've got a lot of other videos on heart rate training, zone training, which zones you should be in, stuff like that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, are you seeing accurate data, okay? And so I did have this written up. That's not my writing. My writing is way worse than this. But anyways, to talk about, thank you, to talk about the zones. I'm gonna quickly go through these because again, if you want to know more on heart rate training and what we're talking about, please go check out some of the other videos. Just do a search for heart rate zones. Zone 1, super easy. Zone 2, pretty easy, warm up. Zone 3, this is where you're starting to get into your aerobic zone. Distance race, moderate, 70 to 79% max. That's what we're seeing here. These numbers, by the way, as we're going through this, also kind of correlate to rate of perceived exertion, RPE, if you hear that. So for example, zone 3 is going to be on your rate of perceived exertion. How hard does this feel on a scale of 1 to 10? It's going to be a 7 to 8 max, okay? Zone 4, race pace, the max that you can be in zone 4 is for about an hour. After that, you're probably going to have to drop to zone 3, okay? And then the one that I really want to talk about today a lot is zone 5, which is very tough, unsustainable, basically. It's your sprint.
Not fun.
No, I think it's fun, but I think it's fun for just a little bit of time. Now, let me tell you why I want to talk about this. I am seeing a lot of people here at the studio and hearing from other people that are like, hey, look at my workout. I was in the red zone down here for, 30 minutes. I'm like, no, you weren't. You weren't in the red zone for 30 minutes of a 60-minute workout because that's not possible.
I was gonna say, it's almost physically impossible, right?
It is
Yeah.
actually, it's not almost, or it is
physically impossible.
Right, so if you're seeing that you're in the red zone for that higher percentage of your workout, your training tool that you're using to measure your heart rate is not accurate. And you can make adjustments so that it is. And one of the things that you can do is actually base it on perceived exertion. I personally, like yesterday was one of the all-time highs for me in the red zone as far as percentage of my workout. But trust me, I felt it.
Let me ask you this. Are people possibly seeing that they're in this zone because when they calculate their resting heart rate, could that possibly be wrong when they initially start out?
Yeah.
And that's what's throwing it off?
It's what your max heart rate is set to. And that is going to be based off of your resting heart rate.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and some of the heart rate systems that you can use, like MyZone, auto calculates, what your resting heart rate is, and it's a pretty good tool that way. But anyways, you can adjust the max heart rate in the tool that you're using. If, for example, it's showing you in the red zone, when you're not in the red zone, you're clearly not in the red zone, you can sustain it for more than a few minutes, then you need to increase your max heart rate as a setting. And so let's say your max heart rate says 175, but you're showing in the red zone for 50% of your class. No. You gotta bump the setting in your training tool. Like I would go into MyZone, change the max heart rate up to, like say 180. So bringing it back, let's talk about how you know when you are in the red zone.
Truly in the red zone, right?
Truly in the red zone.
Yeah.
First of all, very tough, as I said. A max 10 seconds, it's a short period that you're able to sustain this. You start to feel a burn in your legs, you start to feel a burn in your lungs. What's happening is lactic acid is building up those muscles and your energy stores are coming from your muscles, and that's why you can't sustain it for very long.
So you're at like breathing in and out of your mouth only, and you are just huffing and puffing, and you feel like your legs are gonna give out and you can't do another rep of a pedal stroke or a sprint.
Yep.
Like you are tapped out 100%.
That's how you know. So if you're showing in the red zone for longer than 10 to, and this is honestly the up to a few minutes, that's for someone who's like a crazy hardcore athlete, which is not the general population.
Yeah.
Not that you're not, I'm sure you're a hardcore athlete, but I mean, yesterday, for example, I got up to 95% max. I was done after.
You almost need to just stop and let your body kind of catch up to itself for a second before you can keep going. That's kind of what we're talking about. Like,
exactly.
You feel like you're gonna drop dead.
So what you need to do, like I said, is you need to go and you need to adjust any variables that you're allowed to enter on your tool of choice. It might be your watch, it might be you know, an app that you're using. And here in the studio at Studio Sweat, if you're seeing in the red zone on the big TV screen that we have, very often you need to come up to us and ask us to adjust your max heart rate. Same for my trainers here at Studio Sweat. I see some of our trainers and they're like in the red zone way too long. It's just not accurate. It's not that you're not working hard. I'm not trying to not give you credit for how hard you're working. I just want you to see accurate data. So that's what we're talking about today. Okay. Anything else that you think that we should add to this conversation, Beth?
No, I think that was great.
Okay. All right, you guys. So if you have any questions, maybe you can email us in at ondemandsupport@studiosweat.com, or if you're here local in San Diego, email in reservations@studiosweat.com, and come talk to us, and we'll make sure that it's set up right for you. And it might take a couple of iterations to get your heart rate.
That was a big word.
It was. That was a big word. It's Big Word Friday.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you. It might take a couple of adjustments. So if you come up to me after class, for example, and say, yeah, I think that, you know, what I'm seeing up there isn't jiving with how I feel. And, oh, gosh. Okay, there's one other thing I want to mention. If you are on a beta blocker or any blood pressure medication, you're special. And if, for example, if it seems like you're too low, mostly what we're talking about is it seems like you're too high as far as what you're seeing. If it seems like you're too low, most of the time it is because you're on a beta blocker and you don't realize how that messes with your heart rate. If you're on a beta blocker, it's not real data. You go off it for one day and you'll see your heart rate zones will start to show higher.
So for somebody who's on a beta blocker, they need to then go off perceived exertion more so than the heartbeat, right?
Exactly.
Because they can't really get their heart rate to rise up to get the accurate, because the medicine's pushing it down and it's not going to allow it to push up to where it should be. So
right. It doesn't mean that you're not working just as hard and burning just as many calories. But if you are on a beta blocker or blood pressure medication, you know what? Just don't even use a heart rate training tool. It's a waste of your money and your time. Okay? You need to just go off of perceived exertion. And as far as what zones you should be in, check out our other videos on that. So glad that that came to me right then.
Good job.
Okay, and going back to red zone, I almost forgot to say this. It's not possible to go over your max heart rate. Your max heart rate is your max heart rate. It's like saying, I'm gonna give 110%. That's not a real number. Okay, so if your heart rate shows you, if your training tool shows you at any point, anything over 100%, for sure it's not right, because you cannot go over your own max. Think about it.
Yeah, there's sometimes
that is your max.
When I was wearing my heart rate monitor, it would say that I was at like 101%, and I was like, I think I gotta check my batteries.
Yeah. You should never see over 95%. I mean, that's just the honest truth. So again, for sure, if you see that, adjust your max heart rate up in your training tool, okay? In other words, if it's at 180, change it to 190. All right, you guys. One thing that I did want to mention to finish up, your Studio Sweat classes, generally going to be from here out. Once we get out of warm-up, you're generally going to be in this zone here, zones 3 and zone 4, mostly in zone 4. So if you're using my zone, that means I should see mostly yellow. If you're using some of the other heart rate systems, mostly you're going to be in the orange zone there. But we do tap into the red zone as well, okay? But it shouldn't be for too long, all right?
Just for a few.
Just max a few minutes. And for those body sculpting, fat torching workouts, you're gonna go visit Studio Sweat on Demand.